When you start researching these amazing artists living and working at the time, you realize that one sort of cornerstone place that they all seem to gravitate back to is the coffee house.
It has divided the coffee drinkers, but in a good way.
There's definitely still more room for specialty coffee in Vienna, even though the scene has grown a lot over the last years.
Welcome back to the 5THWAVE podcast. I'm Jeffrey Young, Editor-in-Chief of 5THWAVE. In today's episode, we're exploring Vienna's fascinating and distinct coffee culture, from the grand 19th century coffee houses that shaped the city's intellectual life to the specialty coffee scene redefining it today. What is the lasting legacy of Vienna's grand and historic coffee houses? How do heritage and modernity coexist in Vienna today? And why does specialty coffee thrive in a city so deeply rooted in coffee house tradition? We'll hear from specialty coffee veteran Johanna, formerly Wechselberger, and newer player Jonas Reindl Coffee Roasters. But we start with art historian Jamie Reurs and the fascinating history of the Viennese coffee house, an institution that became central to the city's culture. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeffrey.
Tell us about yourself. What made you become an art historian first and foremost?
Well, I was very interested in history, so I ended up studying art history at a BA level, at master's level. And when I was doing that, I became really drawn to the history of Vienna, particularly around the turn of the century, from end of the 19th century into the early 20th century, which tends to end, this kind of Vienna 1900 period, tends to end at the end of the Habsburg Empire in 1918. So this was the sort of starting point. And when you start researching these amazing artists living and working at the time, like Gustav Klimt, Egon Schiele, you realize that one sort of cornerstone place that they all seem to gravitate back to is the coffee house. And that's where it became quite interesting.
So Vienna, what made you so excited about sort of that era in Vienna?
Yeah, well, Vienna is kind of a location that's sort of the gateway between East and Western Europe. And in the 19th century, it was a real kind of hotbed of ideas, of culture, and a lot of intellectuals from around Europe as the continent would gravitate to Vienna and meet there. And so there are narratives of Trotsky living there for some time and Stalin coming to visit him for 5 weeks when he was a young politician that nobody knew about. But you also had the birth of so many ideas as well. You had philosophers like Wittgenstein going there. You had Freud developing his theories around psychoanalysis there. You had artists delving into what we understand as our psyche now there, like through the works of Klimt and Schiele. So it was this really rich place. And of course, it's also a city very much affiliated with music. So famous at the time for Gustav Mahler, but before that, famous for its links with Mozart and Beethoven. And it's just incredibly interesting. And when you go there today, it's like it's still stuck in time. It's so proud of its history, as it should be.
Yeah, so there's genuinely kind of an intellectual connection, and the coffee houses they had a big role in facilitating dialogue, or was it the coffee?
Well, the coffee house is this really interesting, like liminal space. This place that's sort of neither one nor the other. It's a space that is neither private nor public. Okay. And it sort of blurs those boundaries, and it becomes a space, particularly at the end of the 19th, 20th century, that is almost a space for discussion and debate, for gathering, but also a place where one can go by themselves. Comfortably go by themselves to read newspapers. And it's sort of characteristic of a Viennese coffee house to have this railing of long sort of wooden sticks, and on the wooden sticks are these newspapers, and you can read them from all over the world in as many languages as you like, and you can stay there for hours. And the author Stefan Zweig, who's sort of famous for his memoirs The World of Yesterday, he writes about how the coffee house is a democratic space that sort of is open to everybody for only the price of a single cup of coffee.
So tell us about the early history and the first coffee houses in Vienna.
I mean, it all starts with a kind of geopolitical thing, if you don't mind me describing this first. Yeah. It starts with the Habsburg Empire. Now, the Habsburgs were a dynastic family that ruled all around Europe, and they had been sort of in place since around the 10th century in different locations, but they were very close with the Vatican and upheld sort of Catholic values. And the seat of the Habsburg Empire was in Vienna, and they were the second largest empire after the Russian Empire in this period. Now, there was an encroaching empire coming in from the east, and this was the Ottoman Empire, of which we understand as sort of modern-day Turkey was its seat. And first in the 16th century, the Ottomans attempted to invade Vienna unsuccessfully. And then again in 1683, they invaded Vienna, and this was called the Siege of Vienna, in an attempt to kind of take over this very important geopolitical spot. But they failed, and after a few weeks, they had to retreat, and in their retreat, they left, so the mythology goes, 500 sacks of coffee beans. And so there are these two narratives that emerge from this moment that dedicate the sort of rise of the coffee house to sort of two different men. One was a Polish nobleman who fought against the Ottomans. His name was Jerzy Kościcki, and he was a spy for the Habsburg Empire into the Turkish army. And upon the retreat of the Ottoman army, he was awarded anything that he would like, and he requested the coffee beans and a house. And it was said that he set up the first coffee house in 1683. And then the other narrative follows an Armenian spy, so lots of spies, another gentleman named Johannes Diodato, who managed to collect some of these coffee beans after the Ottomans retreated, and he experimented with them for 2 years, and after that experimentation, opened the first coffee house in 1685. I don't know how much either of these are real or true, but they're fun stories nonetheless. And by 1730 or so, there were said to be about 11 concessions of coffee around the city.
When was really the glory days for Vienna Coffee House? When was it?
It was around 1880 till about 1920. Let's say that sort of chunk of time was really crucial for not just for the coffee house, but for sort of intellectual culture, society in Vienna as well. But a lot of that is owed to the coffee house being this great meeting space for so many great minds. Just dating it back a little bit, there was one other significant historic event that took place in the early 19th century, so around 1806. Napoleon put a blockade between Europe and England. And in that blockade, it meant that goods could not be transferred from Europe to England and vice versa. It put a lot of tariffs on exchange of goods between England and Europe. And in doing so, one of the commodities that was affected was coffee beans coming into Europe. And so it drove up the prices for coffee houses in Vienna to be offering coffee, so they had to expand what they were providing for their patrons. And it was at that moment they started to start serving hot meals and alcohol. And so even until today, they continue to serve a wide variety of things, and they're open from, very early in the morning until 2 a.m. in the evening.
Okay, so that sort of set the kind of the tone of what the coffee houses became, sort of an eating house, drinking house, as well as coffee.
Exactly.
So then a lot more dwell time, a lot more...
Yeah, a lot more recreation as well. And it sort of all coincided with a sort of an emergence of middle classes. So it's sort of a perfect storm of things happening around this 19th century moment where the coffee house could thrive. As people had more time off from work, they had more recreation time from work, they were able to spend more leisure time in the coffee houses, playing cards, reading newspapers, and then, of course, spending more money.
So in those glory days, what kind of people would frequent cafes?
The sort of main umbrella of people that we understand that would go to the coffee house to use it to its fullest were the sort of literary elite of the city. And they would gather, they would debate, they would write, they would read. Some of them had their post sent there. They were there so frequently They had their mail received at the coffee house. If you go there today, there's actually, I'd say the most quintessential, most decadent of all the cafes is the Café Central. And at the entrance of the Café Central, you will see a statue of a man. His name is Peter Altenburg, and he was a poet, a writer from this period, and he went there every day. He was one of those who did have his post received from the coffee house. He lived in a hotel. He was this sort of bohemian, transient human who sort of existed in these public spaces in so many ways. Very eccentric. And he actually wrote a piece called To the Coffee House.
Oh, is it actually a poem or is it a short story?
It here.
Okay, go on.
If you have troubles of one sort or another, to the coffee house. She can't come to you for some reason, no matter how plausible. To the coffee house. You have holes in your shoes? The coffee house. You have a salary of 400 crowns and spend 500. The coffee house. You are frugal and permit yourself nothing. The coffee house. You find no woman who suits you. The coffee house. You are spiritually on the threshold of suicide. The coffee house. You hate and disdain people, and yet you cannot do without them. Go to the coffee house. Nobody extends you any more credit anywhere. The coffee house.
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, summing it all up, what impact do you believe the Vienna coffee house had on sort of today's world of coffee?
It was, and it still is, an institution in a way that isn't really replicated in other cities that I've researched or been to. It's got its own set of customs and its own menu in a way that isn't really replicated anywhere else. So I think that its special place within the city and its special place in history, being this kind of place of refuge for so many great thinkers and artists alike, it has had a great impact, maybe a secondary impact on our history, because we don't talk about it as much, but it is essential for when these ideas were first being created. Psychoanalysis and philosophy and politics were all discussed at the coffee house.
Fantastic. That's a great way to end it. Jamie, thanks so much for joining us here today on Fifth Wave.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed learning about the history and social impact of traditional Viennese coffee houses. They served as important gathering places for artists and intellectuals, often acting as a home away from home for their guests. And from my own experience, each historical coffee house has its own unique identity to reflect the diversity of neighborhoods across Vienna today. Now let's fast forward a century and take a look at when specialty coffee started first to make its mark in Vienna. We're joined by Johanna Parker, formerly Wechselberger. Johanna has worked in specialty coffee for over 25 years and is the founder of the Vienna Coffee School and Vienna Coffee Festival. Welcome, Johanna.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice to see you again.
How would you describe the coffee scene in Vienna when you first started out?
The coffee scene back then was, you heard about these old Viennese coffee houses? Well, they were one of the reasons I made my coffee school, because I thought we can change the situation here, because all these Viennese coffee houses were beautiful museums. You still had the old furniture there with the marble tables, the toned chairs, these newspaper holders, these big wooden ones, the waiters, in their dresses with the bow ties, super arrogant, but still could be nice though. Yeah. But the coffee was so crappy. And over the years, even those coffee houses starting having fully automatic machines that were not adjusted properly. So the coffee just, sucked, if I may say that. Yeah. But then the thing is, then you try to teach these people and they were like, oh, girl, I do this in 30 years. Nobody complains. Yeah. Why should I change everything? And this was exactly the time when the specialty coffee scene started. So we had like 2-3 specialty coffee shops. So I see myself as one of the dinosaurs here that brought specialty coffee to Vienna. Yeah. And so with the help of some of my colleagues. And from that on, it really developed like crazy. And we even kicked some ass of the big roasteries, because just some years ago now they started having packaging that looks like, oh, it just fell out of the roaster 5 minutes ago and the roaster hand signed it with blood, it's just roasted and roast master. And I'm like, you still roast it on these big 360 kilo machines. Put a date on it like 18 to 24 months. Only because you changed the packaging, that doesn't make it specialty coffee. But at least they obviously had to react, because we smaller roasters are getting more and more.
Yeah. So if I was to walk through the streets of Vienna today, how important are the traditional coffee houses still in the daily lives of people? And then follow up from that question is, then how important is the specialty scene now in terms of the visibility that specialty coffee scene?
Both equally, because it has divided the coffee drinkers, but in a good way. Because in the old times, the old Viennese coffee houses were basically just visited by the grown-ups, business people, some self-employed people. They like to hang out in a coffee house forever. But the brand that I mentioned before made younger people interested in coffee. But that brand didn't really make it in Vienna. But the specialty coffee houses did. Because now you have a lot of students and other youngsters hanging out in these coffee houses that are better equipped with the interior and the music that they like, in spite of the Viennese coffee houses. But we still need them, because they are all museums of the really, really long-lasting coffee house culture that we have here. Now we have coffee culture too. We used to have a lot of coffee house culture since 17 something, when the first coffee houses occurred. You know that we got the coffee from the Turkish people.
Yeah, that's right.
They tried to invade Vienna, but they didn't make it. We had some help of our neighbor countries though, but they left the coffee bags.
Hey.
So for everybody that doesn't know this story, it was Mr. Kolschitsky, who was a spy, who found out, oh, they're making a drink out of that. And he learned how to do this. And when they left, nobody knew what to do with the green coffee bags. And he said, oh, well, can I have these as a reward? I said, well, take these bags. And he was the first one who opened a coffee house in Vienna called the Blue Bottle. Back then, the coffee house still exists, but has another name and another owner, of course. But he wasn't very lucky with the Turkish prepared coffee, because the people didn't like the strong stuff with the sand in your mouth, basically, the coffee grinds. So he tried all different versions with sugar, with honey, with milk, with cream, with whatever. And this is actually also how these typical Viennese coffee recipes started, because that's what makes these coffee houses so special. You can get many different recipes, and they still keep the furniture and the waiters as they are. So we need it for the tourists. We need it for people who still like our old traditions.
Yeah.
And the good cakes, of course. They are amazing when it comes to cakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about the specialty coffee scene. Where is it now?
It was 3 to 5 shops for 1 or 2 years, and then suddenly it exploded like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It really exploded here. You have specialty coffee shops on almost every corner, not concentrated anymore on the 7th and 8th district. Now you really have them pretty much everywhere, which is a good thing. And what makes them special is they really try to have coffees from several countries, only buy high quality, have them roasted from really good specialty roasters or by themselves, and offer the people also filter methods and not just espresso. That's what makes it special here in Vienna now.
Okay, so tell us about what are people drinking now in specialty coffee shops in Vienna? Tell us what the favorite drinks are. Is the flat white actually?
Still not a favorite. Still, most of the people are drinking cappuccino.
Cappuccino, yeah.
Cappuccino, or what we have in Vienna here is the mélange, which is the same size like a cappuccino, but it can be a little bit more milky. So me as a trainer, I'm super strict now with the recipes, of course. And it's very sad that the old-fashioned Italian-based cappuccino is getting lost a little bit, because the baristas are very, very in love with their latte art.
Yeah.
And a real Italian cappuccino should have, the third espresso, the third milk, and a third foam. Still very fine poured foam.
Yeah.
But those people, like my generation, we had a lot of vacations in Italy. We like to eat the foam with a spoon of the drink first and then enjoy them rather strong drink underneath.
Yeah.
But if you make latte art, you just have like 2, 3, 4 mil of foam on top with a beautiful design, of course, but it makes the cappuccino actually a touch too milky.
Just one final question. What's the future for coffee in Vienna? It's a big question.
It's a good question. What I like is there are a lot of women now in the coffee scene. That wasn't like that in the past. They basically had men as customers and now it's also women. We have a nice little group called Reurs, which are some young women who also do cuppings in different places. I really like it how engaged the younger people are now with coffee. They go to the championships. They are part of our coffee festival, which grew a lot in the last years. They really try to make things better and get a lot of other people hooked into coffee. That's what I did in the past. I didn't have enough people around me like that. I wish I would have. Now they're here and I'm very happy and it will go on. People will be more snobbish about their coffee, which is a good thing. I mean it in a nice way.
Yeah.
People will drink more single origins. People will drink more filter. So we're working hard on that to make people drink better coffee and get better equipment at home. And I'm in a district now where I'm the first specialty coffee shop and it's still a little bit desert here.
Yeah.
I even managed to get some of my homies from the big house behind me, which are retired people who just made a mocha pot. I made them buy their own grinder now, a new stainless steel mocha pot because the old one already was, in the dishwasher, which is bad. And now, after 3 years having that shop, they come, do you have a new coffee today? I taste the difference. And can I try this one? And is it right? I set my grinder on that and they tell me how they make the coffee every morning. And they are so proud now that they learned something. And these are people you would have never imagined that are interested in it. So a coffee shop definitely gives you the chance to have an influence on your customers. And slowly, but we will have more and more people drinking better coffee at home as well. And the more younger people are taking over the old coffee houses, I see a chance here too.
Thank you for joining us here on Fifth Wave.
Thank you.
It's interesting to see how tradition and specialty coffee coexist in Vienna today. Johanna highlighted that while it has divided coffee drinkers, this isn't a bad thing. Both are important and each bring something special to the city's unique cafe culture. And we close off this episode by speaking with Feyer from Jonas Reindl Coffee Roasters to see where the city's specialty scene is heading next. Welcome, Philippe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How about you give us a bit of a background on how you got into coffee?
I've been in specialty coffee roughly 12 years now. Started out with one café that I ran and was working as a barista behind the bar for about 4 years before I opened my second shop and also my roastery. We were like a multi-roaster cafe for the first 4 years, and that was where I gained a lot of the experience I was able to use later on, and was always dreaming about becoming a roaster myself as well. And then after 4 years, I found the perfect location where I was able to do both. So both the coffee roast and have a cafe on the same site. That was a big step for me, and then also opened the door to opening my third and later now fourth cafe. So we are growing steadily, but in a sort of organic, slower way where I don't believe in too aggressive expansion, but there's definitely still more room for specialty coffee in Vienna, even though the scene has grown a lot over the last years.
Great. And tell us about the, your kind of target audience.
Is very mixed, I'm happy to say, because we definitely have locations for different neighborhoods, and that's kind of the goal also to, I think, make specialty coffee accessible to all people. And we obviously definitely, I think, are seen as sort of a younger cafe and have a lot of young guests, but I'm quite proud that it's really the age range is quite wide. And yeah, I think it really depends on what neighborhood you're in.
Obviously, Vienna is such an amazing city when it comes to the tradition of coffee houses. How does specialty coffee fit in with these really traditional outlets?
It's an interesting interplay because I think there was definitely more resistance to it here at first, but at the same time now you can't imagine in Vienna without it anymore. So I think it just took a bit longer for people to accept it. But it's generally something that Viennese people also like to say about themselves and like jokingly say that like everything comes here 5 or even 10 years later than the rest of the world because we're just kind of slower to adopt trends and are a little bit more resistant and have our own traditions. But at the same time, I can only say that my cafes are all running really well and are busy, so the demand is clearly there.
How many approximately specialty coffee outlets would you say there are in, the kind of central area of or greater Vienna area?
I think we're getting closer to the 50 mark probably now. Yeah, maybe a little less, but yeah, in that range.
And what about the traditional scene? Is that still? Are they still sharp or are they becoming tired? And, I guess tourists love them. There's no doubt about that. But are they still credible?
I think credible, yes, but not for their coffee. What we kind of joke about it. I think it's also not fair. Like there's many traditional coffee houses and some of them have certainly made efforts to improve their coffee quality, but it's still the exception to the rule. And unfortunately, the vast majority of them, I think, are, they are very reliant on the tourists, as you said, which is meaning they're all very busy, but it's often no longer locals who go there, which is a little bit of a shame because it depends which one. There definitely are those where they're sort of not right in the city center, and then you do get locals going there for sure as well. But the really famous ones like a Café Central, there's just a line out the door every day, all day. And Landmann is I think probably busier than ever as well. And actually they have slightly better coffee, I would say, and they have tried to be better and making coffee than many other traditional coffee houses because it's also sort of the next generation of owners, younger generation who took over.
Can you see a time when there are more specialty coffee shops than there are traditional Viennese cafes?
Yeah, certainly. I think the traditional Viennese coffee houses, there's not really new ones opening, right? So you have many all across the city, but those are all have been around for a long time and usually also are passed on to families. Yeah.
The new era, so young millennials or Gen Zs, has matcha made its way onto your menus yet?
It has. We were kind of debating it for quite a few years, so we didn't jump on it right away. But I think it was kind of when I took my first trip to Japan, when I also I opened up to matcha a bit more because I had it there and saw kind of the artisanal side of it. And whereas we don't really, do a full matcha tea ceremony in our cafes, just experiencing that kind of ceremony and the tradition that is behind matcha is definitely something that I think for me made it more interesting and open me up to it. And I guess also, as you said, the younger generation is more and more interested in matcha, and we also don't want to miss out on that, of course. And so, it's been on our menu a few years now.
And what about ice beverages?
Definitely, yeah. So important in the summertime because in our case, Vienna is lively in the summer, but it's also kind of not the time of year where many people want to sit in a coffee house, right? They want to go out and go swimming or do stuff outside. And so we sell a lot of ice beverages in the summer and also have like an uptake in takeaway drinks. Yeah. But yeah, cold brew definitely is similar to filter coffee, for instance, we've just seen the demand for it really increase.
And being part of Vienna, I mean, are there any traits or traditions that you carry on to, that are typically Viennese into your own cafes? Or are you literally the modern cafe and, global kind of concept?
The first thing that comes to mind is actually, because we were talking about iced beverages, is our ice café, which is kind of an iced latte with a scoop of ice cream, of vanilla ice cream. And that's kind of a very traditional Viennese drink in the summer. And it's just called ice café. And yeah, we serve that, for instance, as a kind of homage to, it's our version, I would say. It's not exactly as they would serve it in the coffee house. Other than that, I would say we're definitely more of the global cafe. And in terms of food, we serve pastries and cakes. Our cakes, I would say, are also not your typical Viennese cakes. We'll leave that, I think, more to the traditional coffee houses, even though I love like a good Apfelstrudel or something like that. But yeah, I think that's kind of a niche of theirs. And we kind of found our niche in offering stuff that's, it feels more global, maybe like a San Sebastian cheesecake or a good banana bread or carrot cake. And we also have really good pastries from a French viennoiserie place. So it depends on who you ask, because it's obviously a French tradition, but it is called viennoiserie for a reason, because it also kind of stems from Vienna. And so even just like the croissants and other pastries, pistachio croissant or whatever, it was currently in trend. We have that, but it's also in a way kind of a traditional Viennese thing to serve those kind of pastries.
Philip, thanks so much for joining us here today on Fifth Wave.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
We learned today that traditional Viennese coffee houses still hold a special place in the city's culture and history. Specialty today has gradually found its footing alongside this tradition, with younger coffee operators bringing new energy and bridging the old and the new. While Vienna may have been slower to embrace specialty coffee trends compared to other cities throughout Europe, specialty is now firmly established and demand is evident. And in the words of poet Peter Altenberg, if you have troubles of one sort or another, to the coffee house. We've shared his full prose in the show notes. And that's all for this week's Fifth Wave podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share the link with a friend or colleague. Also, if you're on Apple or Spotify, we'd really love a 5-star review to help us increase our reach across the industry. To stay informed, visit worldcoffeeportal.com to get access to all the latest global coffee news, including the weekly coffee dose, collecting all the big coffee news stories. Links are in the show notes. This episode was produced in the one and only Serendipity Studios in glorious Camden, North London. It was produced by myself, Jeffrey Young, Hannah Heath, and sound engineering by Chris Bristow. And this week's song, in collaboration with the Coffee Music Project, is Miraculous Wonders by Akira Jade. Until next time, stay safe, stay caffeinated, stay curious.
Miraculous wonders. Once upon a time, I believed in only fairy tales. You could see dreams, but you don't have to live in Wonderland to see this earth as a gem and be shown off the world already living, just through a different type of lens. How did I never know there was always beauty right in front of me? came to show me the ways. They told me they came from some wonderful place with naturally hot springs, baby pink lakes, rainbow mountains, crystal caves. Miraculous wonders, miraculous wonders. There's life in the water, but they're all so scared. These creatures, they come out when you're not there. Next time